And welcome back, Hornets. Here we are again with our Ready Workbook, Lesson 9, Analyzing Word Meaning, Part 3. We are on page 89, so just in case you're not sure, we're on page 89. And if you don't have your workbook out and a pen, pencil, and highlighter, this would be a great time for you to go ahead and get that out. And just while you're getting that out, I'm going to keep talking, just a quick review, because today we're going to be continuing from part 2. And part 2 was dealing with a scientific account. And guys, a scientific account, kind of like an article, is... You're right. That makes it non-fiction, which means it's real, guys. And a lot of times our purpose behind scientific accounts, it's not going to be to entertain, and it's not going to be to persuade. A lot of time when it's giving us scientific information, it's going to give us a lot of information with some technical language. Nope, I already misspelled it. We're surprised. Nope. We'll just cut that part out with some technical language. Okay. And the audience is going to be whoever it might be a little bit interested in what they're getting ready to read. And our text structures vary depending on the type of scientific article or scientific account. The one that we are currently reading is in a type of sequencing order that's giving us some things that they think is important and working toward things that are least important. And also under our third paragraph and our fourth and fifth paragraph read a little bit like procedure and directions that go along with that sequential chronological order, even though the entire thing may read a little bit different because it doesn't fit into any of the categories. Then we also want to make sure we look at our tone overall. We just said it was technical, and a lot of times technical stuff has a tendency to be neutral, but they can use that wonderful figurative and connotative stuff, those connotative meanings behind words, and those figurative meanings to ramp up even technical language. So even if the words might be seeming technical, they might use, like with that diagram on page 87, we talked about killing the prey. Well, even though the word prey, when you're talking about a predator, is technical, adding killing prey makes it sound even worse than it normally is. So it's just things to keep in mind. So with that being said, we're going to go to our next slide. Maybe. All right. So once again, hopefully by now you all have everything out. And if y'all are missing something, pause me, get things out. And remember, if I write it down in red from this point, you need to make sure that you are writing it down as well. Okay. So, or if it pops up in red, the very first thing we want to do at the top of our page is we want to make sure we write analyzing word meanings. Analyze means to break it down or break it apart. And when we're analyzing word meanings, we're looking for three things to see if it's technical, connotative, or figurative when we're talking about those words. And we do that by looking also to help us break it down even further from that is to figure out if the tone is positive, negative, neutral. And even from there, we can take it a step further and look and see if it's a strong or weak tone behind it as well. All right, then now we're also going to look and we're going to underline our instructions because it says we're going to continue reading an account. It's a big deal. That lets us know we're still reading something from the other page, which is why I'm going to circle continue from page 88. And over here on the side, we've got some instructions on the close reading. Oops, sorry, I skipped. We've also got to remember to number our paragraphs because we had our first three paragraphs on the other side. Now we've got our paragraphs 4 and 5. And now we're going to circle the close reading because that means it's letting us know that while we read this, that we're looking for something in particular. We're going to reread the paragraphs and underline any word or phrase that conveys a figurative meaning. Now, once again, before we get going, we already said that this was the purpose of this was to inform, because it's a scientific account, okay, right? And we already said who the so I'm going to leave that alone. All right. Now, as we are circling, as we're going through and reading, you might want to make sure you circle words with a very strong connotation, very something that makes you go, oh, or just something that makes you stop and think about what we're reading. Then the other thing we're going to do when we read through it is to underline words and phrases with figurative. And remember, things that are figurative, that's a metaphor. Then we have the simile, personification, hyperbole, supposed to be a B, hyperbole, and an idiom. I also throw idiom. I also throw allusion in there as well, because that's a figure of speech in case that shows up. All right. So here we go. And anytime I get too fast, go ahead and pause me. Bedbug infestations can appear to be a blanket of crawling pinholes that cover the place where you rest. The teensy pest often hitch rides on suitcases left in hotel rooms and travel home with unwitting victims. So keep your luggage off the floor when you travel and wash your clothes in hot water when you get home. Use a flashlight and magnifying glass to scrutinize your mattress. If you find any evidence of bed bugs, destroy the mattress immediately and call a professional exterminator. You owe it to your neighbors and fellow travelers not to spread the bed bug headache. All right, so now we're going to go back and look at, I'm going to circle some things that had very strong connotations. Saying something's an infestation, that's got a very negative tone. Let's see, what else? That word victims that we talked about on the previous lesson, that's got a very negative tone. Also down here, using a flashlight and a magnifying glass, and then also to scrutinize. That's very technical language. We're trying to get across that, information technical, even though we're talking about bed bugs. Even right here with evidence. And then immediately call the professional exterminator. We're trying to make sure that entire paragraph seems very technical and very informative, trying to get you to do something and make sure you have information. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back and underline some figurative things that we read. So what was the first thing that you underlined? I'm going to go in chronological order from the top to the bottom. So the first thing I got was blanket of crawling pinholes that cover the place where you rest. This whole blanket of crawling pinholes, that just makes my skin crawl, and that's the figurative language is doing its job. It's very negative. And what kind of figurative language is it? You're right. It is a metaphor. Woohoo! It is a metaphor. It is comparing your blanket to crawling pinholes. You could also make that it could be a hyperbole, an extreme exaggeration. That also would work too. So it just depends on how you want to explain this. For me, it's a metaphor comparing a blanket to a blanket of bugs, technically. All right. Then we've also got how these teensy pests often hitch rides on suitcases left in your hotel room and travel home with unwitting victims. That whole thing right there, using that hitch, there's always that thing that parents tell their kids to not pick up hitchhikers, because you never know if they're good people or not, or if it's safe to do, if it's dangerous. So using that makes these pests, these teensy pests, seem like it's also a metaphor comparing the bed bugs to hitchhikers. So we are comparing those, and it makes it seem like the bed bugs are trying to just get you home and hurt you like it's possible. I'm not saying all hitchhikers do that, but that's the big stereotype that people are afraid of when it comes to hitchhikers. So this also has a very negative tone and it's trying to make you feel a bit afraid of accidentally bringing something that could hurt you home with you. And then it goes so far as telling you to make sure, giving you some more instructions. This whole paragraph is also technical. The rest of this last part of the sentence, so that compound sentence, is trying to make you realize technical language that you need to get home and get this done. And our last one that I have on here is to not spread the bed bug headache. Bed bugs aren't really giving you a headache. So technically that's hyperbole, it's exaggeration, because they might be something that's a pest, but it's not actually causing you to have a headache. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on down to our next slide. And we're going to look at the questions at the bottom. So at the bottom, we've got where it wants us to circle our answers. Circle the correct answer. So which statement best describes the impact of the author's word choice on the overall tone of the account? Well, the first thing you got to do when you look at that is, what was the tone of the account? The entire thing, what's purpose? Remember, we got to talk about author's purpose first. The purpose was to inform, and the overall tone of the account was pretty negative. All right. Even though it had a lot of technical words in there as well and some figurative, it was still negative because it doesn't seem like bed bugs is something you want to have around. Now, if you're struggling as we go through and read A, B, C, and D, over here on the hint, it says the tone of a text is the overall feeling, not just the information it communicates, but also the feelings it expresses. And some texts can have more than one tone, right? So I'm going to give you a second to look at your answer choices. Now, a good rule when you're looking for tone is to go through and mark each answer choice as positive, negative, or neutral and see if that helps you out. Because if you have too many things in your answer choice that's positive, that doesn't match our tone, which we just said was negative. And then also go back and look at your purpose. If your purpose doesn't match your answer choices, that's not going to be your answer either. So go ahead, pause the video, and come up with your answer. And now I'm assuming right now you've all paused me and you're playing again and we're ready to get it going. So let's look at answer choice A. Phrases like teensy pest and hitch rides give the whole account a humorous tone. Well, this says humorous. Humorous is a stronger connotation for the word funny. And if things that are funny, they normally have a positive tone. And if it's got a positive tone, it cannot be my answer because I know I'm looking for something with more of a negative tone. B says words like rest, travel, and neighbors give the account a comforting tone. Ooh, comforting. I like it when something is comforting me. It makes me feel at peace. And if I'm at peace, that's also positive. So that is a positive tone. And that cannot be my answer because we said the overall tone was negative. C says the words evidence and professional exterminator are used to create a threatening tone. Oh, threatening. That makes you not feel safe and like someone's trying to hurt you. That does have a negative tone. So that's going to be a contender. All right. And our last one, words with technical meanings create an informative tone. Well, that's true. It does do that. But phrases like crawling pinholes add a note of disgust. Okay. It does that too, because disgust is that's got a very negative tone. So, which one of these is going to be our best answer? The overall tone of the account. Was it trying to make it sound like I was going to get hurt? Or when I look at D, was it trying to give me some steps and some procedures in order to get to the right, in order to figure out how to handle bed bugs, except for the fact that the author still put that note of disgust and it was negative. Well, I hope you chose D as the right answer because it is a much better answer choice than C, because like we said when we were reading it, you're trying to get information on how to handle bed bugs. The author just couldn't suppress his disgust of bed bugs while you were reading it. So then our last step we have is to show your thinking, which is to explain which words and phrases helped you figure out the intended tone of the account. Well, I'm going to give you a hint. Go back and look right here and see if that helps, because you're trying to show me how you got your tone. So I'm going to give you a second to get that written in before I show you my answer. I'm assuming now that you've got all of that done. You pause me. Oops, and there we go. So I've written down blanket of crawling pinholes, and notice, guys, I put quotation marks around it because I pulled it straight from the text. Expresses a negative feeling of disgust because it conveys the idea of being covered by crawling bugs, and that's just, yeah. And the whole thing had a note of disgust with it. Okay, well, and that is all for our lesson, part 3 from lesson 9. I hope y'all learned a little something and to stay away from bed bugs. If you have any questions, send me an email. Tomorrow you're going to be reading about David and Goliath from the book of Samuel. And you will also be watching a little video that goes along with that before you read about the Goliath beetle. All right, guys. Have a good night or have a good day. Enjoy the rest of class. Bye.